Hello again. Welcome back to the PagerDuty Twitch channel. I'm Mandy Walls, DevOps Advocate at PagerDuty. Thank you for hanging in with us. We had some issues with our streaming software, but everything seems to be working okay today now. With me today is Rob Jahn from Dynatrace. Hi, Rob.
Hey, how are you?
All
Everyone,
right.
thanks for joining. Thanks for your patience. Yep, we had the same issue getting in, so but I think we're all live now, good to go.
The cloud, yes. So Rob, tell us about what you do at Dynatrace and what you're going to share with us today.
Yeah, so Dynatrace, PagerDuty, been working together quite a bit over the years, and Dynatrace is the leader in the observability field. So we'll talk a little bit about our platform and kind of get into how it works. But my role is really looking at the use cases around incident management, user experience monitoring. My background actually is a bit in performance engineering and architecture. So a lot of the pre-testing and now the SRE topics are definitely very close to sort of what I like to do. So I think we're going to talk a lot about automation today and really how ecosystems of tools tie together to really, hopefully solve problems that come up like these outages.
Right? Yeah, it's like, oh, it's always something. So excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear it. And I'll let you go on with whatever you've got.
Yeah, well, so I have just this is Twitch, and we want, all I could say is whoever's on, please add your comments and questions. We want to make it interactive.
Absolutely.
I do have, I'm a technical person, so I can dive in, go a little bit into cover things that are of interest to you guys. But let me just do a little bit of just context setting as the start. And I've got one little deck here just to kind of talk. So, what we're seeing now, just as a broad theme, and Mandy, jump in on this, but Dynatrace works with a lot of enterprise customers. So we've done a survey of many of those folks and just really kind of got some metrics around the rate of transformation, folks moving to the cloud. And it's not just a single cloud provider, it's really multi-cloud strategies, supporting, PaaS services on-prem, modernizing things. And there's a lot of complexity that goes with that. And so I'll just kind of buzz through a couple of these things to pull it up. But these are some of the observations that we had in that report. And on the previous page, there's the link if you want to download it. It's probably about a 50-page report, so it's actually pretty insightful. But this is just kind of getting into, the fact that we're having complexity of not only the cloud, but a lot of new services as we're breaking down the architectures into microservices, moving to Kubernetes, for example. There's just a lot of more moving parts, and that translates to more work for the support staff. It's more complexity to deliver the code from dev to prod and operate this. And so the processes around manually pushing code, inspecting code, interrogating code, getting a bunch of people to try to look at their monitoring tools, for example, to try to triage the problem, all results into taking things longer. And then that's really what the top right is about, reducing innovation. If you are spending all your time doing non-innovative things, then that's going to hurt you. I don't know if you want to add in anything to that, Mandy. Just sort of
we see the same thing, right? Like you're spending too much time dealing with the complexity and not enough time dealing with the things your users want you to be doing. So
yeah, I think this bottom stat, average proportion spent on manual tasks, 44%. That's pretty crazy, when you think about that. And it's true. And it's not that nothing's automated. It's really semi-automated. You may run a job, but then you have to look at the log and verify something, or you have to do an approval before it goes to the next step because you just don't fully trust something to go all the way.
Yeah.
So this is, actually I took this where we had this outage. That little robot was the Google down page. But anyway, but these are some pain points, maybe to kind of put it in more plain language than marketing language. But it's really, the time to identify, respond, and solve issues is what really is why we have this manual work. And a lot of it's just the big picture as we're companies that are more adopting an agile kind of framework, a DevOps culture. They're all now working on the same page. They're looking at the same tools. They're responsible from not just writing the code, but how it operates in production. And so having that view and tying it into the business to know what the business priorities are is important. But by not having that becomes a pain point. How do you prioritize your stuff? My piece works kind of attitude just isn't really what we need today. I don't know.
No. Everything's too interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's yeah. So it's what we, and so we have a lot of tools, like we have Slack and Microsoft Teams, and we have lots of tickets, but it's, it's really connecting people. It's not just the tools. It's really, people needing to not, have ownership end to end, like really doing the postmortems together and really trying to do continuous improvement. And a lot of that is like having access to the same data. We really need to democratize the environment. So you can't just have, well, I have to go to a DBA to see the database. I have to go to this group to see the network. I have to go to this group to like, do I have a security vulnerability? So it's really, these silos is what also is a lot of pain. When everyone has their piece, then that's bottlenecks.
Yeah.
So this as a little splash. So some of you folks don't know Dynatrace, but we are, I said, a partner with PagerDuty. We're actually a publicly traded company. We're trusted by a lot of very large enterprises in the world. Won't get into that. You can check out Dynatrace.com, but this is who we are. And really just from a technical standpoint, Dynatrace has a platform. So we're not just a application monitoring tool or a host monitoring tool. It's really a comprehensive platform. And you can see there's lots of things on the bottom that enable this, from our traces and metrics and logs, but it really builds into a topology model. And that is where we layer on an AI engine to really get to root cause analysis, which is what we're going to get in today. But then bringing in data from the cloud and the traditional apps, from VMware, even back to the mainframe, mobile and browser support. And so that's what we're going to dive into a bit today. Just this one thing I just wanted to explain about how this feeds into PagerDuty, because what we're doing is, the goal is to not send alert storms to say, hey, here's a problem on my host, and that goes to the host team. Here's a problem on the database, that goes to the database team. What we're trying to do is put it all together. We the buzzword out there is AI ops, but we really truly are layering an AI engine to help us get to the root cause. And that's where Dynatrace has a purpose-built AI engine to do that problem. So I know it may be hard to see on the right, and we'll do some of the demos, but really what it's trying to do is put this thing into so Dynatrace's concept, you'll see, is a problem window or a problem card. And what it's doing is continuously analyzing that to come up with business impact, application impact, and user impact, and then dynamically taking care of what is the topology of the impacted items. So then when it gets to that root cause, now this is where the power comes in. Now we can feed that right into PagerDuty with the context, with the priority, what's the impacted item. And then from there, that's going to lead into immediately identifying the team that's responsible, rather than getting everyone involved to get to the problems being resolved quicker. And then if the ultimate thing, and we'll show some of that, is with the data that can come across, that can drive the automated runbooks. And so today I did some work to teach myself Rundeck over the weekend. So I love some basic, but that's sort of a type of tool that we can really do things together. And that's kind of what this slide is all about. So what we're really trying to do is improve the incident management with AI, getting to the root cause faster, and then proactively managing it through the processes that you have to do with your operations folks, and then feed it into an integrated set of tools to really drive, just consistent run books, but also then lead into automated, using terminology of PagerDuty, automated response plays to drive that. And I don't know if you please add on to all this, because this was a lot of me talking.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, love to hear it.
Okay. So then, like I said, so this for me, I learned, I don't know, maybe you can comment on this, but I know this was a relatively recent acquisition of Rundeck. I took this from the website. I kind of like the pictures. There's this lady kind of going crazy with all these alerts, things on fire. And then the idea is that we're putting some intelligence and some consistency to automate these. And these bullets on the left were really kind of the main use cases of that kind of orchestration.
Yep, absolutely. PagerDuty acquired Rundeck last year, so they've been with us 13 months. And yeah, it's really about encapsulating as much of your team's expertise in a place that they can then share that out with all the folks who actually need that stuff. So you're not constantly interrupted by tickets and unplanned sort of request work that way. And folks you have a trusted platform where folks can do their own.
Yeah, because a lot of things are the same things over and over. And I think that's where people usually start small. They may have some, and a lot of times this is really gluing it all together. So you may have a script that recycles a box, or restarts a JVM, or clears out some log files. So what you're doing with a platform like this is kind of wrapping that in a consistent way,
Yes.
putting some, like as the bullets really say, like you can safely delegate it and automate your existing scripts, whatever they may be in. And then by linking that into your incident management process, like what PagerDuty has with an instance, which we'll see, then you really kind of glue a lot of stuff together. So what we're going to demo, and again, please ask questions along the way, because it is pretty comprehensive, I think. What we're going to do is I have an environment set up. I have Kubernetes running on Azure in this case, and I've got a sample application that's made up of a couple services. It's automatically sending traffic as kind of part of its setup, so that there's some things for Dynatrace to monitor here. So Dynatrace is monitoring the Kubernetes environment. And then what I'm going to do, it's going to kind of interesting. I'm using GitHub Actions. If you're not familiar with that, that's an ability to do CI and CD now within GitHub. You may have your tool of choice. It could be Jenkins or Azure DevOps or whatever, right? There's different tools to do that. But in my case, I'm going to push out a version of a particular service that's going to have a problem. And then we're going to, by identifying that problem in Dynatrace, now we're going to push through the integration from Dynatrace to PagerDuty. It's going to open up an incident automatically. We'll see that it associates it with the team that's responsible for this order service. We're going to open up a Jira ticket. That's what PagerDuty does all this. So PagerDuty is going to automate the creation of a Jira ticket. It's going to send some stuff out on our Slack messages to kind of inform folks. And then what we're going to do is resolve the problem through one of these actions within PagerDuty, which will then call another webhook. So there's lots of webhooks. So if you don't know what webhook is, Google webhook. But essentially, it's an API endpoint that is an interface into a system or a targeted job. So in my case, it's PagerDuty is calling a webhook of Rundeck. Rundeck in turn is calling a webhook to rerun the deployment to automatically roll back the version of code. And then it's going to Dynatrace. We'll see that's resolved. And that's kind of the use case that we wanted to show. And it's really about, just exposing you to the types of things you can do in an automated way, and just to see the tools in action. That's really the goal for today.
Excellent. We do have one question in the chat there, but maybe you'll get into this when you do the bit of the demo. One of the viewers wants to know, with the feed to PagerDuty, is there a current upgrade or other track for a Dynatrace integration, because it goes directly to the service and not to event roles? So maybe you'll show us that when
I'll show that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. And that'll be kind of right in the beginning of this demo, actually.
Excellent.
So and you can see I have a bunch of different tabs. So hopefully you'll kind of follow me along. Sorry for my dog in the background.
No worries.
But he wants to join. He has some questions too. But just to show you, so what I'm running, this is my order application, just to show you it's a real app. This is open source as well, so you're welcome to install it. I can share those links. But this is basically a multi-services app. And so the way the web UI is, it shows me what version of the backend service I'm running. So as I change it, you can kind of see that it's a different version. So over in Dynatrace, so now I'm in the Dynatrace web UI. So Dynatrace is offered as a SaaS platform, which is what I'm logged in now, as a sort of a SaaS offering. But a lot of customers also install the Dynatrace product in the cloud or even on-prem to kind of manage the Dynatrace platform itself. So what I'm here in is there's a lot of different features. So we're not going to get into all, but just if you look on my left-hand side, this is where we've organized the menu in Dynatrace to see these things. So I've got a couple favorites just for today's demo. So what I'm on here is really just want to show you, just talk about service levels a bit, because this is a topic you'd expect sort of as a monitoring type tool that we would monitor service levels. But we're going to break things into operations. Folks often are operating against some service level, which has different time frames. So Dynatrace has the ability to look at a service level across a time frame, whether it's the same metric. In this case, it just picked an error rate one, or could be an availability, across these time frames. And so what just a concept, if you're not familiar with that, is an error budget, which is kind of interesting. So if you can only have 3 hours of downtime a year, say, and you were down for 10 minutes, well, how much of my budget is left? So this is sort of just a kind of a cool concept that's sort of a operational standpoint, to kind of monitor it and be proactive to say, geez, if I have one more outage, I'm at risk. And then another kind of metric is any sort of metric in Dynatrace. There's hundreds of metrics. Can look at things from like response time or error rates, more real time. So this is where I may have a real time view of my system, or if I'm doing a performance test, I may want to look at the same service levels, for the 10 minutes my test was running, or after I do a deployment, which is what we're going to do in my example, to say, hey, are my service levels good after I just did a deployment? More like a release verification, if you will. So we'll get more into that, but I just want to kind of navigate you a couple things that we see in Dynatrace, and then we'll make a problem. Actually, what I'll do is let me make a problem while I'm talking, and then the problem will manifest. So I'm going to come over to my GitHub Actions tool, where I can deploy a version of the code that's going to have a problem. So I'll just kick it off. So I know version 3 in my case is a bad build. And just if you've never seen GitHub Actions, many of you have probably been to GitHub, but there's a tab called Actions. If you never clicked on that, you can make a public repo and learn how these things work. But essentially, it's maybe not too interesting to watch, but I'll just kind of zoom in a bit. But it basically, like any pipeline CD job, it's going through a sequence of steps. So it's getting the code, setting the version within the files that drive Kubernetes. It's connecting to my Kubernetes cluster. I'm redeploying a new chart, which is the term for Kubernetes, to have a new deployment definition. And then I'm also going to tell Dynatrace that I did this particular event, and then it's done. So we'll watch this in action in a second. But let me just go back to Dynatrace real quick, and we'll look at, just to show you what we're doing with Kubernetes. So as I mentioned, in this case, this is a Kubernetes cluster running in Azure. So this is a view which we just call the cluster summary view. So I'm looking at my cluster as a whole. In this case, it is a physical cluster where there's nodes that underpin it. And then these, again, we're not going to get into Kubernetes terminology, but if you've heard of some of these terms, namespaces, pods, daemon sets, there's a whole set of terminology around Kubernetes and its architecture. But essentially, you can think of it, like we've represented it here to kind of simplify it. We've got my workload of my cluster. I can analyze the individual nodes and their health, and then the workloads themselves can be analyzed. And then the areas of the system are kind of broken into what's called namespaces, which are regions where my app may be running.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead. Your comment?
No, it looks good.
Okay. So this app, as I was mentioning, is made up of multiple workloads. There's a catalog, customer front end, and order service, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. So in my case, the order service is what I just did a new deployment on. So now as I drill into each individual container, I can see, utilization metrics as a whole for it. I can see the historical kind of view of some of the pods that we're running to make this particular thing up. So every time so there's a lot of data. So we're not going to get into all the things of Dynatrace, but just to kind of show you, there's a pretty, just even at the infrastructure level and utilization of the workload, that's what Dynatrace is picking up. And then at a higher level, if we think about, and this will all lead into the PagerDuty thing, right? Believe me. But we also have another view of knowing what's happening in my environments. Let me just change to the last 5 minutes since I just did a deployment. So this is an area of Dynatrace where we're aware, and we have different strategies for knowing what version of code, where it's running. In the case of Kubernetes, the stage, which is like your logical region, dev, prod, is coming from the namespace it's running in. And these things basically in this case map kind of one-to-one to the running processes in Kubernetes. And what we can see here is what I did for this order service. If I go into it, now we can see this is showing that, this was represented the first version. Now I've got a new version running. So it kind of shows me what was running, but I can see that a deployment just took place. So this is the context now that, hey, I ran this GitHub action job to deploy this version of code. Now I'm running version 3. So right now I know a deployment took place in my environment right away. So this is important data as we get into an incident that may arise. So here, just now with that, speaking of problems, we should now start to see some problems happening in my environment. Okay, so the code version I deployed was purpose built to basically, different versions of the code I've programmed in like an error rate or response time problems. And so we're now starting to see those kind of bubble up in Dynatrace. So let me just do a quick little refresh. And what the Dynatrace is going to do is it starts, and as I was mentioning, it's let me click on the order problem. So it's starting to do its AI engine work. And I'm going to pull up this card so you can see it's processing right now. So Dynatrace doesn't want to immediately alert you, because there could be lots of things, in addition to the response time that it wants to analyze. So it's starting to say, there's a service that's starting to be impacted. And I just, for purposes of demo, I've kind of programmed in a threshold that I just wanted to kind of force the problem, but normally the AI engine is normally automatically baselining tons and tons of metrics to say, hey, there's an anomaly or this is normal or whatever. And it's also factoring in logs and events that take place. All right, so here we go. So now it's been opened. Now it's kind of completed its work. And I can see that that it's sort of starting again. It's a really simple app here. So I've got JMeter running that's making my traffic to my front end, and my front end is calling my back end in this case for a kind of simple example. But you can see it's already built this card where I can see everything's related to this particular function that's being called, the order line function. I can see there's an impacted service, and what should happen here, it will merge these problems into, in a second, it should, if it does it right. Sometimes in a demo environment, it doesn't always do what you want, but what I'm expecting is, and if it doesn't, it's okay, just for purposes of demo. What will happen is problems will get merged together. So what I was hoping to sort of demonstrate, maybe I'll just pull an old one up. Here was a response time degradation, and you can see that it had multiple impacted services. It built a different resolution path based on its problem. And then we can go in, and I won't, right now I'm not going to get into the analysis part. If we have time, I'll kind of go back into how you analyze it from a code and an operator standpoint. But the important thing is that the ticket now I'm going to switch over to PagerDuty. So here's my PagerDuty environment. And what happened, and maybe I should just show that real quick because someone asked about that. So how did it actually send it over to Dynatrace? So let me come into the settings. And so in Dynatrace, we have what's basically this is one of these webhooks. So, and I'll show you the config on the PagerDuty side. So what I've done is I've got a notification set up. I'll just kind of stop here. So we have a custom integration into the, I'll kind of zoom in a bit, into the PagerDuty API, which is this. Okay, and what it does is we pass over a big custom payload. I should probably hide my key, but that's so in there, if you saw that real quick, but there is like a unique key that goes with your webhook that you pass in it. So anything that goes to this API will, that's how it resolves it. Okay. So then we have like a templating engine where all of this stuff can come across. So now if I go to the PagerDuty side, let me just show you the, how that's done. So what we do is go to integrations. And remember right? And sorry, I'm trying to remember how I did it. Sign incident actions. I remember. It'll come to me. It's kind of one of those. You set it up once, and then you don't have to set it up again.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think they're under automation. There's event. Is there event rules?
It's event rules. You're right.
Yeah, there you go.
It's event rules. Yep. So there you go. So under event rules, right? So now you have these they're called rule sets. So let me come in here and thank you for my tip. And we'll go ahead and edit this one. And so what you have is an incoming event source. And so what happens is, I guess I'll probably delete this on the demo, but basically that the API endpoint and your key is unique when you make one of these entry points.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll just kind of hide that real quick. But then what you can do is I've got in the system, I should maybe step back and say, let me step back before I show that. But in PagerDuty, there's kind of two sets of config we have. One, I've set up what's called a service directory. You can see here from the notes, usually some piece of the infrastructure or a component that a team operates, manages, and monitors, right? So what I've done just for the demo is I've kind of built a one-to-one. Every one of the services I built one-to-one to the app team. And you can see already as it's smart enough, and you'll see that config that it's indicating I have an incident that's impacting these two services. You can also have another view where you can have more of a business service, which is also kind of cool, where you can kind of instead of can span multiple technical services and kind of organize things at this level. So then it kind of makes a dashboard, has dependencies, and maybe Mandy, you want to comment more on this, but this is another way of organizing your service management.
Yeah, the business services are super helpful, especially if you've got like support folks or you're receiving like reports from your users, because they're not going to know what your microservice is named. So you're going to get a report maybe from a user or customer that says, hey, I'm having trouble like browsing the catalog, or those kinds of things. So you want the data that rolls up all of these microservices into what the users actually see and what their experience looks like. So yeah, it's definitely worth taking a look at that build if you haven't looked at that yet. It's super helpful for that.
It's super helpful, right? So I'm definitely, I admit I'm scratching the surface of the typical complexity, but what I have so what I've done is built 4 services. So now let's go back to the rule set, and this is actually really cool. Is where what the payload, as I showed you, comes in as a API, and if I go into let's just see if I can edit this one. I just add a new rule just for fun, just to show you what it does. So what you can do is you get an ability to come in and say, all right, run this with any of these rules come in. So if I say in the message body, so this is coming from Dynatrace, contains, and this is actually pretty nifty. Why is it? It's going to say pretty nifty because usually when you click on the message, oh, here it is, show details. I'm sorry.
There you go. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, there you go. This is an example payload that came in, and what you can do is say, in my case, we have Dynatrace. If I scroll down to the bottom, there's a field called tags, which I didn't get into that, but I could go back to that way down in here. Here we go. So there's a thing called tags. So in Dynatrace, maybe I should show that real quick. So I know, sorry for bouncing around, but this is
not a problem. No, it's great.
Technical talk. But
yeah,
if we get into the services, let's just go to that order service again. And what a lot of people do, well, I mean, everybody does, I shouldn't say a lot of people, you're using tags in your cloud services, for example. Yeah. So if you, and these things can be labels of owners or versions or priority, this is prod, non-prod, and all that metadata then drives the logic of these rule sets that we're looking at in PagerDuty to decide what to do. So if this was non-prod, that's a different probably path than prod.
So, it gives you a lot of extra semantics to deal with everything that way.
Yeah, I mean, we have things in internally in Dynatrace where different alert types, like you could just get it pretty complex. You could say, well, this is my disk full alert, and if it's only 80% and it's a non-prod, then don't page someone on a weekend, right? But if it's production, then that's something different. So these tags can come in from, in our case, Dynatrace is picking up Kubernetes labels that were built into my manifest files. They can be custom tagging rules that what we do is we can dynamically build these tags based on attributes of a service or a host or process. They can be automatically brought in from a cloud provider, and all of those things get passed on. So when we're looking at the rule set here, it just gave me the collection of all those tags, and there's a ton of them. So if I click on this, I think if I click, so I click on here, it's sort of it's a cheat sheet to kind of copy the syntax for how to match this this, right? So you look for payload.custom details.tags. And then what it's saying is, I can say contains something, right? So what I did is I said, my order service, right? So as long as there's a tag called order service, then I want that rule starts to kick in. So then you can manipulate, you can make variables, you can do these things like create an incident, suppress an incident. You can control when you do it, how you do it. So this rule set's very powerful.
Yeah.
And so I have a kind of a simpler, relatively simple, but then this UI is really nice. So now you understand, like, all right, if I see this tag and it contains front end, then do what? Set the priority to 2. I made these all up, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. And so that's how it maps it automatically based on the tags coming from Dynatrace to then do some sort of logic and team assignment.
Excellent.
Right. So then that's how, when these incidents come in, I can come in and see, it automatically mapped it to the service, right? This ticket got mapped to the service. It automatically got assigned. So if I click on that service now, this is now like maybe a team view, and I can see, all right, I'm the order service people. And, these are incidents that came in from Dynatrace, and, set the priority. Now you're kind of working it like a ticket at this point. And then, and also just, I think I'll kind of do this, I think over here, if it's I have Slack just to kind of show you a couple things. Over my Slack channel, I kind of made my own demo, but you can see here in Slack, I can actually, let's see if I can do it real time demo. Let's see, what's this one? 39. I want that one. 39. Let's do 39. So we'll acknowledge it in Slack. All right. See if it did it. Should have.
Fingers
Live
crossed.
demo. Let's see. Acknowledge. There you go.
There you go.
Acknowledge. Yeah. So this may be where your DevOps team, they're living in Slack, right?
Yeah.
They're not living in these tools necessarily. And let's go ahead and resolve that one. And let's go over here. And probably went down here. Yep, cool. And then also we have, we are also sending things over to Jira too. So I think if I'm, so if I go to, sorry for not knowing the UI as well as you guys. I think if I come on here, there's a link to my Jira ticket.
You might be pushing it as change events. You might be pushing it as an integration to the service.
I'm pushing an integration to the service.
Yeah. So if you go to your service directory, it should be like the second little card for each service.
Yeah. There we go. Yep.
So you click on the service, it's actually doing the sending, and then integrations there. Maybe Jira.
Yeah, I thought I would click on it. Well, what I could say is if we could get the right button, I've also set up I guess we've navigated into the Jira cloud integration, but what I've done here is I'll just kind of show you the config, and then, but what you can do, and this is kind of just all the out of the box stuff. So I could say, here's my config name. I want to make a Jira, what do I want to make? I want to make a bug. I can do assignments. I can map all the fields properly. I can add custom field attributes. And I just can't remember how to get to my Jira app, but it is there. And so that's so if you're not working in PagerDuty and you're working in Jira because this incident became something that, a backlog item for someone to resolve, then you may be working that through the Jira process, separate from the incident management process. But so let me just show you the remediation, because that's kind of the next kind of cool thing. So let me go to that incident that we were just looking at. And since this is my my order service, I'm going to go to this specific ticket. Oh, here it is. Right here. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I haven't seen a Jira integration before.
I knew it was easy.
That's cool.
I knew it was easy. All right. So let's open that up just to show that there was a ticket. Would make sense. The Jira specific ticket would be linked to the incident. So here you can see my Jira environment. Again, just the way I kind of map stuff, it really was the description. But you can see here also in Jira, there's kind of logic in Jira where I can also have this concept of components. So I also built all my components. So in the Jira side, you could look at tickets by component, and that mapping of the PagerDuty service to the component was also kind of done through that integration. So I kind of carried through that data, and it just kind of shows you how something as simple as a tag can be really pretty powerful, because now you can, pass that metadata on, and now I can say, all right, here's my component order service. Here's all my tickets. They're mapped to these problems. I can be in here. I can get the hyperlink back to the Dynatrace problem that's mapped to the ticket. So all these deep links and tags really drive a lot of just efficiency, because now, they're all hyper linkable, right? You could add stuff to Slack. I can hyperlink to the thing in Slack, for example. And that's part of the automation, is just making things easy to get to.
Yes.
And I just, you think of like other, maybe I go 10 years ago, but 5 years ago, 10 years ago, just to click around on things was just not possible.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do here, which is cool, is now this is the custom actions. So this is where I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the config. So what I've got built is a one, you can build custom actions that kind of tie into these, and then what I've built is integration for a call to my Rundeck environment. So what I've done is I've made a custom incident action called revert order service, which is calling, and I'll show you how I did this. This is the webhook on my Rundeck environment to trigger, and it's associated with this service. So if I go back to that incident again, or go back to my services directory, pull up that ticket again, then I'll run it and I'll show you what it does. So if I have my order service, we'll go to I want this one, and now the menu I get, and this also is in the mobile app too. So I'm not showing that, but you can also do all this in the mobile app as well. But I'm going to call this revert order service. So I click that. It's now ran a custom incident action called revert order service. So what that did, so if I come over to my Rundeck side, I probably did it pretty quick. So now I'm, in this case, this is just kind of nice. So Rundeck can be installed as a community. You can do an open source version of it, and you can also do a enterprise version because of our, so in my case, I have a license, so I'm using the enterprise version. But this is running on I just happen to use Azure for this one too, but this is running on a virtual machine in Azure. And you just can spin the app up, and it's running here in this direct host. And so what we invoked was a webhook. So let me just start with the webhook on the Rundeck side. So I made one called deploy order. And so when you say create webhook, one, it's going to, the URL be generated once you create it, but you can call it whatever, new webhook test, and save it. Let's like plug in. Okay, the plugin I wanted was handler configuration. So then you have to choose a plugin. So then I wanted to do a run a job. So that's what I was doing. So I said run a job. Okay, which job do I want? I had a job called deploy order. You can do other stuff. Save it, and then boom, I have my webhook that's going to be configured to do that one. I'll delete that one so I don't screw up my demo. But this is the one I have configured, which is exactly the same thing. So it's just calling my Dynatrace order job. And so let's look at the job. So there's a lot to this product too, but the way it's you can see on the left-hand menu, kind of get a sense of what you can configure. So I have a job. And so a job is just automating something. So let's look at the definition of my deploy order job and what I did in this case. So let me edit it so you can see what it does. So descriptions, tags, again, if you have a bunch of these, you want to organize it all. But then the workflow it's really nice. It's really pretty powerful to control things like this. So one, there's also like a secret store. So in my case, I want to call GitHub. So I need a secret. I need the secret so I can store my token in Rundeck as a secret. I can reference that as a variable. It masks it from the job execution as you'd expect. And then in this case, I have what I did was I added a step, and there's a lot of steps you can do. You can build your own custom plugins. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. So in my case, I was just doing a simple inline script, but you can see there's lots of sort of built-in automation for that. So if I was to go to my script, it doesn't do much, but it's pretty powerful nonetheless. So it's going to echo out. This is Unix shell script. Not familiar with that. Hopefully you are, but it's just sort of displaying some output for the job. And then what it's doing is going to invoke this API of my GitHub job, GitHub Actions workflow, passing in an event type, a payload, which is the version that I want to deploy. And then it's also going to call another job, which I'll show you, assuming we have time, which is also doing an automatic SLO validation. So I have kind of two jobs.
Okay, interesting.
Do a deployment, and it's also going to do an SLO, and then that's kind of what the job does. So since we've run it already, let me look at the job execution. I'll leave. And so the output doesn't look too interesting, but here is, we just ran it 4 minutes ago, and I can look at the output of this script. So it ran the job. It's going to do deployment 1, setting version to 1, and then calling this other one, and then there you go. Now you can look at it here, which is basically what we were just looking at a second ago. But let's look at it, and so you can see here, 4 minutes ago, because we've been talking for 4 minutes, it did the deployment, and what it was going to do is deploy back to version 1, because I passed in version 1, and then what it's doing, these are more technical details, but this is, if you've never seen a Kubernetes Helm chart, they're called Helm charts, but this is a definition, a YAML-based definition of what you want to deploy into your environment. There's all different object types, services, deployments, etc. But the deployment object has all these labels. So as I was mentioning earlier, by setting these labels in your chart, Dynatrace is automatically aware of these types of things. This is the image I'm deploying, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what it did when it ran it. And then when you deploy the service itself, you're basically running there's a plugin for Azure to deal with Kubernetes deployments. So it's just expecting the file, which it runs against your environment, does its thing. And then when it does this push event, built into this script is we also, actually in our open source Dynatrace, as an aside, we have a GitHub action to integrate with Dynatrace. So then this is doing a push event right from the GitHub pipeline. And then the other job it was running, which is our SLO, and I'll kind of get into this in a second, but this is also invoking another job. It's a single API call that's taking a series of parameters and then calling this SLO service, and then it basically asks it to evaluate. It waits for it to be done, and then eventually this is the raw data that comes back from the validation, and then I'll show you how it gets represented in the UI. But anyway, back to the problem. That was a deep dive sidebar. But so by running the Rundeck job from my problem ticket, right? I've actually done it from PagerDuty. So in a controlled way, I have an incident. So to kind of backtrack, I had an incident, if you remember, that we then ran and you can actually see from the timeline. So maybe this is a good way to do it. So it got tricked. So initially the problem came in at 1:34. The details of this came in from the Dynatrace problem alert, right? Automatically assigned. I can actually see, which is actually kind of cool. If I wanted to see the raw, this helps for testing too. I want to see the raw data that came from Dynatrace and problem. Like there may be something in here that doesn't map to your ticket, but like now you can see the raw nitty-gritty details of what was happening in that particular API call. But anyway, you can see here it notified me. It did a push notification to Jahn, which is my Slack channel, I believe. It also emailed me
Yes.
So
Wants to get in touch with you. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, if you're on call, yeah, you can't hide.
You can't escape.
And then you can see here, I ran this particular revert service action, and then things are going on. So I didn't like maybe get so crazy where it's automatically updating, but you can see some of the power of this all
Yeah.
in the ticket. So hopefully on the Dynatrace side, we'll see if the problem went away. Let's look. So what we should have happened is our order service problem. Yeah, this is a different problem, but if this order service is the one that we opened, if I look at it now, the problem is now resolved. So by redeploying that version of the code back to version 1, my problem, it went back to normal. And just to show you what's this in Dynatrace, so if someone wanted to look at the service, here I am like drilling into a service, and I'm looking at the time series metrics, which you'd kind of expect, response time, failure rates, CPU throughput. You can see this is the window of time where we were, I kind of artificially made this problem, and then we resolved it. And that's kind of what that is. And then you can see at the service level, this deployment history. And I got a little bug here, but you can see I originally deployed version 3, which is this guy, at 159, and then I did another deployment. I got where I rolled it to version 1, and then again these have the hyperlinks back to the job that did it. Yeah. And then if we go back to the releases screen, we should. If I go the last 5 minutes here. Change this. All right. So now my release is back to version 1 again. So that's kind of, so that's kind of showing a lot of end-to-end stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super sophisticated. Like
that's I told you, super sophisticated. Yeah. So the good news now, granted, I have, I do not claim to be an SRE or DevOps guy, but once you start to learn automation, this tool, I stood up. I did get some help. So shout out to Forrest who helped me set this up a little bit on Friday. But once you have, you're really gluing things together, and it's really through the power of APIs. So it's making them work, storing the secrets in a good way, and having a convention, coming up with your patterns for how you want to lay out the system. And then you want it to be data driven. So that's the goal. It's like data drive it. And then you'll have some consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. So for folks who are new to Dynatrace, what do you see them getting started with? What's a good first project for Dynatrace?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Dynatrace as a platform is one. It's similar to a lot of SaaS products. You can go to Dynatrace.com and if I can spell Dynatrace properly, Dynatrace, and with that. Dynatrace, and we have a I guess free trial right there on the homepage, right? So there's a free trial. So when you provision this, you're going to get a 15-day full platform version of Dynatrace that you get everything that I was just looking at here. And the way Dynatrace is typically people start is they have some host, could be, VMware, could be the cloud, it could be however you have a physical host. And typically you're installing Dynatrace with our agent. So we have something called the one agent. And this process is operating, it goes at the operating system level. So if you're Linux, it's literally, you create a token, which is dynamic. And then there's 2 commands. It's going to download the agent, and then you install the agent. There's some options you can have, to control some of the naming, but literally that's it. So Dynatrace is a very, that's our tech. So when you look at something with a host running on it, there is no configuration for the processes and the services that are running on it. What's going to happen is Dynatrace will automatically see the host, all the attributes at a host level, all the processes that are running on it. And we build this into what's called a Smartscape view. So as I was mentioning, Dynatrace has a data model of building this vertical relationships, hosts to processes to services to applications. So this is, and then data centers down here. So all of the relationships vertically are kind of built automatically. All these processes, Dynatrace, there's no difference in licensing. There's no additional config. It automatically is aware of the processes are running. It does bytecode injection to see what's happening with the services in your running code. And then also with the end user, there's also, there's basically a serverless agent that connects the communication from the browser back to the backend calls it's making. And so this is how people get started. They basically get Dynatrace, stick it on a host. You automatically see all this monitoring I'm showing with really nothing, nothing you need to do. And that's the real power of it. And then if customers, if they have, again, it's just 2 simple scripts, download and install, that could be wrapped inside of a Terraform script. That could be done in other configuration management tools if you want to actually automate that install. But people typically just try it out that way, and then for Kubernetes, what happens is if you have a Kubernetes cluster, which is what I have, we have something called an operator model. So if you have a Kubernetes cluster, we have a different installation script that would, again, we kind of wrap it, and this is, there's also, if you're into Helm charts, this can also be done with Helm charts, but very similarly, you can make your token, and then this will download a full installation script, which will, what we call an operator. So running in Kubernetes is an operator model that's managing the lifecycle of the agents. So then within each host in your cluster, it's automatically going to get the one agent, and then it's automatically going to instrument every single pod running in your environment without any changes to the pod itself. So that's the unique tech thing. Mm-hmm. There's no change to a container, whether it's on a host or Kubernetes. And that's kind of the other way people get started there.
Awesome.
And then with PagerDuty, then like I said, the config is really, straightforward. You kind of make that, if you can find the right screen, you could just, make the connection. You get your webhook. There's actually a really nice help page for how to set it up, and you can get that snippet of code for the payload that you paste into the Dynatrace side. And then that will start to push the problems over into PagerDuty. And then you can start doing your event rules to, isolate that, for example, into, a test area to learn how you want to manage it on the PagerDuty side.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I added some of the documentation for event roles and that API call into the chat there for folks who haven't seen that stuff before. It's super powerful.
How are we doing with time? Do we have
I have nothing else going yet, so if you want to keep going, go for it.
Well, I'll just show you one more thing because we triggered, and I'll go back to the Dynatrace dashboard. So this is a little bit of a topic on its own, but I'll show you the outcome without getting into all the nitty gritty. I'll pull up that dashboard we looked at the beginning of the call.
Yeah.
And so I was mentioning these individual service metrics. So this is a custom dashboard. So again, all those were pre-built dashboards we were looking at before, but here, I can go in like you'd expect and, build my dashboard, the way I want it to look. And then each of these little tiles, if you will, I can start analyzing data and construct my query for my purpose. We have a thing that is for automatically evaluating all of these SLOs in kind of one shot. So there's sort of what's happening right now with these particular metrics I've defined, and we're doing that through a platform. It's within Dynatrace, which we call the cloud automation, powered by Captain. So we've been working on an open source project called captain.sh. And part of that is this a control plane for for running event-driven evaluation. So essentially, we've come into and triggered a job that says, hey, let me run an evaluation flow that's going to start with. I kicked off my evaluation. You can see it was kicked off by this job over in GitHub. It's going to begin to gather metrics. But let me show you the outcome, because this gets into how it's doing it. But the outcome is I want to have those metrics that you saw on the dashboard, it's got a little shorthand here, but response time, 50 percentile, 90 percentile, 95 percentile, error rates. And I want to kind of evaluate that. In these requests were like, show me for the last 5 minutes, these metrics. And so you can see the actual value here for this little window of time. You could make it whatever you want. And then I want to have some sort of defined criteria that I want to evaluate it again. So if I go back to the dashboard real quick, you can see now, for this one, it was, I need to be under 600 milliseconds. And then what it's doing also, the way I have it configured, is that look at the last 3 evaluations. And as long as I'm under 10%, no more than 10% more than the last 3 times it ran, then I'm good.
Okay.
So you can kind of mix and match, like, all right, relative to the last couple runs or relative to a hard-coded threshold. In this case, I have both. And so then what it's doing is for every SLI, so a terminology here is service level indicators, service level objectives. Maybe we can put this in the link, but if you search for Google SRE Handbook,
yes,
this has become a little Bible out there, but there's a lot of theory in there. But how do you make it happen? This is how we're making it happen, because the metrics we have are the indicators, and your service level objective is this criteria. And now what we're doing is saying, all right, gather all this metrics, evaluate it against your criteria. In this case, I have 5 metrics that has an even weighting. So everyone counts as 20 points towards the 100. And now I've scored 100 points, which is, sorry for scrolling so fast. I had a criteria as long as I was, I was over 90% of my score, then I'm good. And that's kind of the idea. And if I look at if I click on it, it'll show me a failure rate. So here it's like this one was under, because some of these criteria failed. Here, I didn't get a score for them. So I only got 60 points. And so it failed. And so the way you would use this is, I just did a deployment. Maybe I have a smoke test script, or maybe I'm actually receiving customer traffic, or maybe I have a canary deployment and I can run it against my canary users and see how they're doing. And if they're good, I can roll it out to everybody else. I'm running a performance test. So there's lots of use cases where you can use such a thing.
Yeah.
You can do it on demand. You can build it in your pipeline. I did. But this idea of incorporating this into your incident management, like, all right, let me just quickly run an API call, let it run this thing. Let me tell you that it passed or failed is a pretty powerful tool. I think on another PagerDuty thing, I think I actually built it as one of those actions in the mobile app where you can click it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you automatically get this score. So if you want to say, hey, how are my service levels looking? I don't have to look at a dashboard. I can run it, and then it'll tell me in the data, how it did it. So I can see, so there's a definition. This is what the raw definition looks like. So you can see I have an SLI. Here's my criteria, here's my weighting, so that's how the definition behind the scenes looks. But you have a declarative way of the SLO and SLI definitions, and then it's wrappered, it's invoked by this this service that's evaluating that against your specific invocation.
Yeah. Neat.
And so it's kind of combining, that's why I said in the beginning, it's a combination of service levels at like for maybe service level agreements or more of a broader duration versus, what's happening right now or the last 5 minutes or last 10 minutes. And I want to also do an SLO verification. And so you're kind of getting the both of those. And again, that's the power of APIs. So in webhooks. So it's really, once you have the tools, that's really where the integrations come about, right? And you can see here, and here, like I can click, this is passing along this metadata of the GitHub action job that did it. So here is the job specifically. So now I can say, all right, where did that come from? And now there you go. That's where it came from. And again, so this same URL, I didn't do it, but the same URL could be put into the Rundeck job because it did it. This is the thing that did it. Yep. And this could also bubble back up to my Slack channel. It could bubble up to the PagerDuty ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things with the Rundeck side is that it's going to run all kinds of jobs and all kinds of things for you. And if you do have it hooked into PagerDuty, you can continue to annotate your incidents so that as you're continuing to do work or it kicks off different jobs or whatever, you can push that information back into that incident so that when it comes time to write your post-incident review or whatever else, you have all that documentation.
Exactly. I mean, so I think it's, this is, kind of an advanced topic, building integration, but folks that are responsible for this, in the SRE side, they're trying to build frameworks that they roll out to their dev team. So It's really, all what we're seeing is you want consistency, but you also need self-service,
Absolutely.
You need to really delegate it, but stay within your guardrails of doing it. And so, I think what folks are looking for when they're looking at a Dynatrace and looking for a PagerDuty is, it's proven in these large environments, right?
Yes.
So it's something that I can make this investment in this platform because one, it has lots of capabilities, but also is built in a way to integrate with other tooling. So, PagerDuty is not limited. I mean, I'm sure you'll say this, PagerDuty is not limited to just Rundeck. PagerDuty can call Ansible Tower scripts, for example. To do automation, right? So it could really, that's the idea. Like if you use Slack or you use Teams, okay, every customer is different, every environment's different, and that's the idea that you want a platform that can, and that's where APIs and webhooks and metadata become the secret sauce of making that all happen.
Yeah, that's the glue that knits all that stuff together across all those tools. We have something like 600 different integrations that perform all kinds of different actions and communications back and forth with PagerDuty.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I didn't have time to do this, but because you guys, maybe because you bought them, but there is a native way to integrate the two. I didn't have time to do that, but
no, it's okay because it's official, I think, as of today, and folks can tune back in on Thursday to this channel. We're going to run the launch demo for the new stuff for Rundeck actions and some other things that are coming. So
and here's some new stuff. I don't know, maybe this is a spoiler.
Yeah, that's some other stuff coming too.
There's some other stuff. So yeah, so I mean, so I mean, we're software companies that are trying to stay ahead of our customers, and we learn from you guys, right? So these requirements. So Dynatrace, we're actually on our generation 2 API. So we're in the process of really revamping. We're probably way more than halfway done at this point, but there's, we're on our next generation of metrics APIs, automation APIs, configuration APIs. So we do a lot with APIs too. So we're API forward company. And a lot of it is, the next generation webhooks just allow for, enhancements to security access controls, new ways of, standardizing the way that you go after the data and identify, in our case, our entity model. So that's where, some of our enhancements are driven by, having a consistent abstraction for interacting with the data and metrics within Dynatrace, and same thing with configurations and settings. So I don't know if that's the nature of your guys' stuff, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the same path, and like we're really, especially with the integrations with Rundeck and some of that tooling, like we're really trying to give every responder a powerful enough tool set to handle all their incidents without opening a ticket or paging additional folks or anything that delays your mean time to resolve. That really.
And actually, maybe I could. I'm cheating, but I'm looking at this. But this gives you an idea of the granularity, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically a webhook is basically. I mean, they all work conceptually the same way, right? Something takes place, and you're subscribing to some event in your environment, like an incident or a service, and you can see all the verbs. But you can say, oh, I want when that and that happens, push it somewhere, and then let that downstream tool, decipher and parse the data for those event types, do its logic, right? And that's similar to if I go to this guy just to kind of show you, to go to a slightly different environment, but just to show you the concept is there for of webhooks. Let me just kind of show this real quick. And strengths dot right lab. but just to show you, in here, there's a webhook service that is the same kind of idea. Actually, you can see here. So we have different services, and they're all subscribing to this event model. So we have an event evaluation, event get SLI. You can read that, and then, but then if you want to build your own thing, you can say, oh, here's my task. It has a triggered started finished. And then I could, where does it go? Like they all kind of work that way.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Right. So yeah, and that's what I mean. So for us, this is like our next generation of being able to do integrations through a event-driven control plane. So we got a little control plane. So what's happening is these events go across basically a message bus, and now you can subscribe to the events and interact with the message bus, which allows for asynchronous processing and things like that. But the idea is yeah. I mean that's what's opening up the next generation of integrations. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need it. Like the old models fall apart when we're looking at large distributed systems with a lot of different microservices and all of these things are no longer able to run things the way they used to be run. So
yeah,
everything.
So that's stat. That's stat at the beginning.
Yeah.
Hopefully your journey, you out there watching, this one that says 44% of the time, that one cracks me up. I actually shouldn't crack me up, but it's it's kind of like eye-opening. Like, wow, there's a lot of room for improvement, but that's where people can really by leapfrogging to the next generation of tooling. That's how you're starting to address some of these problems. And I guess this may be out of time, but just like I said, you can get Dynatrace if you're in Vegas, which is coming up. In February for us, we have our big annual conference, and this is also going to be live streaming stuff too. So a lot of these topics, just like you guys have, like it's a great way to also learn about the platforms and learn about use cases, and also like the Twitch channel, like the one that you guys are going to do next week. It's just continuous education, really.
Yeah.
That's where I learn every week. I learned about Rundeck myself last week. So watch these webinars. Subscribe to the announcements, ask us questions. Mandy and I are kind of evangelist types. So reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're happy to answer questions that we couldn't cover today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. So thank you, Rob. That was fantastic. That was kind of a wild trip through all the crazy stuff.
Yeah. So you can see why we have fun with our jobs.
Yes, it is different all the time. There's always something going on. So yeah, 100%. Well, if you have any other questions, if there's still a few folks watching, we're a little bit over our scheduled time, but that's not a problem. If you do have any other questions, you can drop them in the chat there while we wrap up, or like Rob said, you can reach out to us. I am LNXCHK on Twitter. I think Rob is the real Rob Jahn on Twitter, right? Or you can hit us.
Yeah, I think someone took my name. I didn't think there'd be too many like me, but
right.
I think there's some German PhD professor guy. So which is
I want to try and compete with that. Yeah,
I can't compete with that. So
weird questions for those folks. So yeah, you can reach out to us on LinkedIn. If you have other questions for us here at PagerDuty, you can reach out to my team. We're community-team at PagerDuty.com. We're happy to answer any of your questions about PagerDuty and all that stuff. So Rob, thanks for coming on today.
Well, thanks, Mandy. I learned a lot. Thank you for the opportunity to share what we do. So
awesome. Love to hear it. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Thursday on this channel at 11 a.m. Eastern, we will be running the launch demo. You can join us then. If you haven't signed up for the webinar for that, you can also hit our events page, pagerduty.com/events, if you'd like to participate in the Zoom for that, or you can just watch us here or on Twitter. We're going to try and stream it on Twitter as well.
That's
good. We'll see how that goes. It's an experiment, right? We're always experimenting. So yeah, in the meantime, make sure you're following our channels. We're here at twitch.tv/PagerDuty. We have some more stuff scheduled for December, and I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving in the U.S. next week, because we won't be here.
That's right.
Taking some time off. So yeah, if you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, make sure you reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. So.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Rob.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Take care,
Bye, everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you never miss a stream. Follow us at PD Community and PagerDuty on twitch.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you'd like to be on our stream, email us at community-team@pagerduty.com so we can feature the cool things you're doing. And don't forget, check out all of our global events on our calendar at pagerduty.com/events.